All right. The broadcast has started, so we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Lauren Bone.
I'm Tamara Tupou.
Kelly Brady.
Tracy Bow. Did Kim get in there?
She did, but she was muted.
Yeah, I always am muted. Kim Cliff.
All right. And then JC, you said you were going to read our questions?
Yes, so I will start. So the first question is, okay, so they started out with talking about the two readings that we had, and the one from Sister Beck, I believe, and the other one was the one that was written by a bunch of different people. And it said, which of these readings do you side with more and why? Okay, so the one reading was What Women Know, and the other reading was Sister Beck's, what was the name of hers? It was something similar to that.
Mothers Who Know. I think it's Mothers Who Know.
It's going to
I didn't think that what women know, what they were saying was too terrible until like it got toward the very end and was talking about like the stripling warriors and how that's not like a triumphant scriptural passage. It's a like a shame and can't remember exactly the words they used, but I was like, oh, like that's really, that seemed pretty out there to me. So I think I side more with what Sister Beck was saying in her message personally.
That's exactly how I felt, Lauren, too. Like I was reading it and I was kind of like, yeah, I totally like get this. But then when that at the end, I just kind of cringed. I was like, I felt it was kind of unnecessary. And yeah, it was war, and but I felt like they took it in the wrong context, like that they were celebrating the warriors killing other people's sons, which is not what that is about at all. It was about a war that they did not want to fight. Like they did not want to send their sons there, but they were sending them off with faith because it was something that had to be done. It wasn't something that we're like, hey, come on, let's all get together and have some faith and go out and kill some people. Like it was like, we don't want to have to do this, but we have to protect our freedom and our liberty. And we're sending these boys out here to protect, our women and our children. And so, yeah, I just thought that last part was pretty unnecessary to put in there.
I considered like the dragonfly effect and Elder Bednar's advice too on social media and everything that we've been learning about and doing ourselves, and the response talk or blog post or whatever you want to call it, letter, didn't feel very authentic to me. I felt like it was a mixture of being easily offended and interpreting the things that she was saying wrong, Sister Beck was saying, and I don't know, it didn't give me a good feeling. And it wasn't even that I disagreed with everything that they were saying, I think that they made some points where you could sit back and go, okay, like I get it. I get where you might be, how you might interpret it that way and everything, but it just didn't feel as authentic to me as watching Sister Beck's talk did. Like I felt there were so many moments watching her talk that made me feel like, okay, like there are some changes that I need to make, and it felt genuine and it felt real to me. But maybe that's just because of my upbringing. I don't know. I know that we all have our own opinions because of, how our lives are going and where our lives are, directed. But I don't know. That's just the feeling that I got.
While I was reading it, I was just kind of like, yeah, all right, okay, so why are you arguing? Because I just kind of felt like a lot of what she was just saying is just expanding what Sister Beck said in a different way. Because she was kind of targeting Sister Beck in what she said, but I'm like, okay, but this is kind of what she was saying. I think you were the one that are interpreting it wrong and decided to take offense from it and not really knowing the true doctrine, what Sister Beck was trying to share with everybody. Like, there was something, like, I really agree, like, nurturing is not confined to mothering or housekeeping, but is a universal attribute that communicates patience, peacefulness, and care. I'm like, okay, yeah, but that's not, like, this is not, you're not debating what Sister Beck said. You're kind of saying what she said. You're taking it to a different level. You decided to misinterpret it, kind of, in my opinion.
Well, and I kind of feel like if you're going to pick a fight with something like, I don't know, Sister Beck to me has always seemed, because isn't she the one too that like never married herself and doesn't have children or anything? I heard her speak at a timeout for women in Sacramento, and her whole talk.
Sister Do.
Huh?
Sorry, I think that's Sister Do that never
it's
married.
Sister Do. Okay, you're right. So I'm getting them mixed up. So it was actually Sister Do that I heard speak. So okay, so Sister Beck has been married. Okay. Not that it makes any difference. I agree with Hallie that it just did kind of feel like picking a fight over something that wasn't necessary. Although the part where she put that we're the best housekeepers, I was like kind of like, yeah, that just kind of makes me feel guilty for not doing stuff.
I think that there's a difference between messiness and like cleanliness. I don't know. I know that's not really relevant to what we're talking about, but I always, my house is very cluttered at times, but my house is clean. Like I think that there's a differentiation there where we don't have to feel guilty because the house is super messy, I don't think. As long as our children aren't going to, get a disease because it's so insanely filthy.
I agree with what you're saying, though, because to expect that you're always going to have like a clean house when you have small children is not very logical. And to have this idea that you're going to go around and clean the house all day long goes against that other part of nurturing and taking care of your children. So I think it's that point of the cleanliness of if someone comes to your house, they're not going to call authorities on you and have your children taken away because there's just so much filth everywhere that it's not sanitary to live in your home. So I think what you say is valid.
Mom, let me out.
Okay, let's see. I can read the next question here. It is, what did you think was the tone and intent of the What Women Know article? Did you see any of the philosophies of men mingled with doctrine? I feel like, do you guys feel like we kind of just answered that? Or do you want to go over any of that more? If not, I could move on to the next question.
I just realized you couldn't see my head nodding. Yeah, I think
okay. Yeah, on the other screen, sorry. Okay, so the next question was, if there were a document titled What God Knows About Women and Mothers, which of the two articles you read would most closely resemble that?
I mean, I think it would definitely be the Mothers Who Know, just because that was more of a positive, uplifting kind of article. The other article just seemed like it was trying to be argumentative, but I don't know if that's the right word, but it just didn't seem like it didn't give you a positive feeling as you were reading it. I don't think at least that's what I got. So I think that it would be the Mothers Who Know.
Okay. I think that's definitely true as well, because it came from someone who has been called by God in this realm to give us some revelation. And if you listen to her talk and you kind of go over that and compare it to sorry, my child's fighting me is making me lose my mind. Family Proclamation. There we go. her talk was very directly linked to what it says in the family proclamation. And so if we're to believe that that came from God, then obviously everything she said would be in line with what he would say.
I agree.
Okay, sorry guys. I was checking on one of my kids, so I just realized my husband took him with him. So at least that's what I'm hoping happened. Okay, so are we ready for the next question? Okay. So the next question is, what do you know a woman's role to be in our Father's plan?
I think it was very well outlined in the talk that we read. And I agree with what Lauren said about how, we can seek gospel doctrine, anything that's come from prophets or leaders of the church. We through our testimony, we know these things to be true, through our understanding of the gospel. And so if we consider these things, with the right attitude and the right spirit, we will know what that is. And maybe it is different for all of us. I don't think that there's a cookie cutter answer for everybody, but I think that, being a mother and a wife and a woman in general with the right spirit and the right intent, I think, you won't go wrong, regardless of what that definition is for you. I mean, to an extent, with the right spirit.
I totally agree, Tamara. I always think that, sometimes I think as women, we feel easily judged, or that others are looking to see how we're doing with things, and it's easy to feel that we're falling short. But I just think that, if we really get down to it, Heavenly Father knows all of our individual circumstances, and he knows what's inside all of our hearts. And I think really a matter of what is right for us is a matter between us and God. It's just what may be perfectly good for one person may not work for somebody else. And I think that's just something that's personal between you and Heavenly Father, and what's right for you. Okay, let's see. The next question on here is, how might a man's understanding and conviction of a woman's role dramatically impact the eternal well-being of children, families, and women?
Can you read that one again?
Okay. It says, how might a man's understanding and conviction of a woman's role dramatically impact the eternal well-being of children, families, and women? So I guess just that men having the knowledge of what women's divine role is, how does that impact families and children?
I think it might change the way they, maybe the way they value their wives and their children, or the way they see it as an eternal kind of thing. So I mean, I don't even know if that makes any sense, but I just think that if they have that perspective, they will understand the not the value. What's the word I'm thinking of? I can't think of, you know what? I can't think of the word, but I think if they understand it, that they will maybe behave differently, and also maybe look further, and instead of just focusing on the here and now, maybe they'll have a better eternal perspective. I don't know if that made any sense.
I think that understanding like a woman's role is helpful for a man in defining what his is. And I think that could make them want to work harder toward making those things happen, such as being able to take care of the family. So, you know, in this day and age, that means that you have to get educated and you have to be willing to go out and work hard and work toward those things that will be able to keep your wife in the home and taking care of the children. And also, you know, controlling your material wants, trying to, you know, have a modest home and not getting into consumer debt and all of those different things. And I think those all end up having eternal consequences.
Yeah, I feel like I saw such this like firsthand with my sister, who she's not a member of the church, and she recently just went through a divorce. And just watching like when they were married, like the way he was with her, like not having that perspective at all, and like how he just always expected her, like if she was working less hours than he was always like, well, why should I be doing it? Like, you have just as much responsibility to provide for the family as I do. And you know, just not having any of that, you know, that basic like respect and like almost that wanting to protect and to nurture, you know, the woman in the family and put her as something that's important and that has like a special role in raising the children as well. Like he was always just like, you know, which it turned out being me. It's like somebody else can take care of the kids. Like, you know, you need to be out working. And so it was just sad to see like that perspective on things. And I'm not just saying, I mean, I'm sure there's men that in the church can be like that too, but I think men that truly are following the gospel, you know, have that more, you know, that tenderness in their heart for their wives and understanding what their role is.
I think too they acknowledge the importance of like being an example for their children as well, because you know we know that children learn what they live, and we can't just say one thing and then behave another way. And so if our husbands or brothers or fathers, you know, are teaching these things, they will be very likely reflected in our children in the way that they deal with their wives in the future and their children. I think it does affect, you know, generations of time, even these small things that husbands can do.
Okay, there is one more question here. The last one is, the Savior has said that in the last days, even the very elect shall be deceived. How can we avoid being deceived by the world's philosophies of men and women's roles?
I think it's funny that that's one of the questions, just because we were reading a talk by Sister Beck, who we all pretty much agree she has been called of God, and yet these women, or I think it's women and men, who signed the petition of this other letter, you know, instead of listening or trying to, listen to her talk in, you know, with the Spirit with them, they sort of just went at it and tried to pick it apart. And that's like one of the first things that will lead you down that road. And so I think that's interesting, because if we do follow our leaders, you know, our prophet and apostles, and even the ones that are in the general auxiliaries, that I think that we'll be okay. But they just seemed to want to pick apart each thing she said and sort of like put their own take on it.
I think it was Dallin H. Brother Elder Oaks, or I guess President Oaks now. He said once that you know, when I give a talk and I get a lot of controversial feedback, I know I did my job. And he wasn't saying, like, I'm not trying to pick fights with people, but I know that the Lord's doctrine is hard for the natural man to swallow. So when I see these things that kind of like take me aback and I'm like, wow, that's really difficult, or I have to remind myself, like, these hard things that we're told to do are God's plan. And so it makes only sense that it would be hard for my natural man instincts to accept it readily. So I guess one way to prevent getting deceived by the difference is knowing how it affects you or not internally. That's the wrong word. Eternally, and just go from there. Like, always have the Lord on your side, always seeking his guidance, the being receptive to the Spirit during these things. But, yeah.
Yeah, I think that seeking the Spirit, like, continually is super important. I think that, we know that the adversary will deceive us in ways that don't even seem like deception. It's harder in these days because we're so aware of it that he knows he has to do it in a way that might seem even pleasing or normal. And I think that happens when, we don't turn away from even little thoughts that, are on the border of being right or wrong. I think that, a decision even to work outside of the home, I think that that's a personal decision that each woman needs to make. And, there shouldn't be any judgment there, but where do you go from there if that's the choice that you make? If it's not a necessary thing, if you're doing it just because you feel like working, if it's, I guess if there's a wrong mentality behind it or it's being done for the wrong reason, you just want more income because it would be fun to have more income, not because it's a necessity. And going from there, are you thinking, are your next thoughts, well, do I really need a man to support me? I'm supporting myself, and slowly you're going down a path that you don't even realize you're on it until you're, way far gone. And it's those little things that take you there if you're not careful, and always keeping the Spirit with you and dealing with those things as they come, and really considering the reason behind why you're doing the things you're doing, and if it is in line with your beliefs and the spiritual promptings that you're receiving.
I think what I've always found interesting is like people going around and picketing and like marching and stuff for all of these rights, like like this feminist movement. And it's like these are God's laws and they're unchanging. Like we can't influence that, and just because people are going to decide to lose their testimony over it doesn't mean that the church is going to change what they're doing. And I think something important for us to always remember is that most often we hear revelations that don't make a lot of sense, and then years later we find the reason why. And so sometimes we hear something and a lot of people just get really upset about it really fast. And it's like, but look at all the past revelation we've received, and we've, the people that followed it, they've later have found that, it was better for their health, because, or, when the word of wisdom came around, and different things like that. So I think we're just too quick to get offended and too quick to, I guess, thinking shallow, just thinking in the moment of the now. And I know as far as like women in the priesthood and stuff, that's really one of the biggest things that you hear right now, and why don't women hold the priesthood and stuff. But I also think that in talking about subjects like that, you also have to consider the fact that we're put here to gain experiences that we need to return to heaven. And keeping that in perspective, like maybe whatever role we played before we came here and when we return, we didn't need the priesthood to be able to return to the kingdom, but men might. And so I think you just can't think of things so shallow, and you can't be quick to get offended about something that we know we're most likely not going to understand right away, or we may not ever understand while on this earth.
Lauren, I was just going to ask you, is the thing with like women in the priesthood, is that something that's big like in Utah? Because I've heard people from Utah like talk about that before, and being in like this little town in California, I've never honestly, like it's never even anything that's come up, but I have like heard people from Utah talk about it. So I wonder if it's something that is discussed a lot there.
Actually, yes, there was. I assumed it was kind of everywhere, but there was a group here that was advocating for women to receive the priesthood, and the main leader of that was excommunicated. And like even right down to like, if you follow this, wear purple to conference type of thing, so that they can see how big the support is and everything. So yeah, it has been a really big movement, at least here in Utah. So
okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have to say, okay, I don't know. How did you guys feel about that last video that we watched? I was kind of like cringing in that, because I'm like, if I was somebody that was like a total feminist and I watched that video, I would be like, oh my goodness. Like when she made that comment, she's like, it is men that gave women the right to vote, and that gave them birth control, invented birth control, and the washing machine and the refrigerator. Like, well, thank you, men, for making our lives in the home a little bit easier, like, and not forcing us to have a baby every year. Like, aren't you wonderful? Like, I was just kind of like, oh my goodness. And then the whole part with, do we really want our girls to be like these boys? Like, I felt like they were saying, like, it's okay for the boys to be this way, but girls, you know, I just felt like it should have been like more like, it's not okay for anybody to be doing these things. Like, with the equality thing, like just because the boys are chasing the girls and the girls shouldn't be doing it doesn't mean it's okay for the boys to be doing it as well. I just felt like it was kind of a not very well done message.
I agree with you. I thought it was good up until that point. As soon as they started talking about, well, it's men that came up with this, and I'm like, well, that's so that their wives would have more time to do more chores for them.
We could cook the, you know, the 5-course meal when they get home at the end of the day. Like, you have a washing machine now, honey. Yeah. Yeah, and the voting thing. Like, we didn't let you vote for hundreds of years, but then we decided you could. Remember that a couple years ago? So anyway, I just thought that video, I was like, yeah, this is not a video I'd want to show to try and prove my point to somebody.
Yeah, definitely not the approach I would take. If I was going to have that message, it would definitely be in a like satire kind of way, like, ooh, yeah, you guys gave us all these things. But then I risk the, you know, putting men in the bad light, which we don't want to do.
Right, right. Okay, so if you guys want to, let's see, Kim, were you the one taking notes? Do you want to do the summary?
Yeah, if you guys are ready. We talked about the what women know and mothers who know. The end of the women who know regarding the 2000 stripling warriors was a little harsh. They took it in the wrong way, and it was sort of unnecessary. And then somebody mentioned the butterfly effect, and that the what women know talk didn't feel authentic, that they were easily offended, and that they were taking Sister Beck's words the wrong way. And that the one who wrote the What Women Know article seemed like she was targeting Sister Beck and trying to take offense. Sister Beck's talk is more in line with what God would say. She has been called of God and was speaking by the Spirit. We can know what things are true through the Spirit. We as women can feel easily judged, but Heavenly Father knows us, and what is right for us is between each of us and Him. Understanding a woman's role helps define a man's role, and he will want to protect his wife and family, and will know that to value and cherish her. The Lord's doctrine is hard for the natural man to hear. No, it affects you eternally is one way we can be able to hear that doctrine more easily. We should always seek the Lord and be receptive to these types of things. Satan has to try to deceive us in ways that we won't even see because we are aware of what he's trying to do. It's the little things that Satan does to lead us away. God's laws are unchanging. The church isn't going to change just because someone loses their testimony, and we're too quick to get offended and thinking of the here and now. And then we talked about just now the video, so that was it.
All right, thanks so much, Kim. So do we want to do assignments for next week, guys? We're almost there, you guys. Almost there. Everybody hang on.
So isn't next week's like a little special? It's that Amazing Grace thing. Do we do something together, or is it still the same type of stuff?
Oh, I don't know. Should we all look at it maybe later in the week, and then we can just text each other for what to do for next week?
We could do that, or see. I could be putting us off track here, but
I mean, I still think it's that we have some information to read, and then we have some questions to discuss. But that's all that I remember seeing of it. So if it might be something more than that, or I don't know.
Okay.
It's probably the same. I'm just mixing all my classes together.
Right?
You're good. I don't even look ahead because it totally overwhelms me. I'm like, I can only take 1 week at a time.
I only did it this week because I'm totally freaked out about my